Welcome, guests, to Hotel Pacifico's Battle for BC, the second of our 5 weekly episodes breaking down the riding races for the federal election here in British Columbia. Joining me again is Richard Zussman, Global TV's Man About Town and curler extraordinaire. Richard, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. I am in beautiful Penticton, British Columbia. I forgot my hat, so we're not wearing matching hats, but I
That's very
remembered my
sad.
T-shirt. I know from listening to Hotel Pacifico, we're talking about south of the Fraser today. So I've got my Dead Frog T-shirt from the brewery in Langley. And it was nice of Kate Hammer to say such kind things about our pod last week. I'm still waiting for Jeff Meggs to say nice things about me, but I've been waiting a long time for that, Mike. So another week is okay with me.
I think I did get a supportive grunt from Jeff.
Yeah, yeah, good.
So, yeah, he doesn't dish out the praise easily, Richard. You should know that by now.
No, I do.
Um,
That's why I've been waiting a decade for it, Mike.
well, you probably have to wait longer. Well, let's get right into it with our milking the data segment. And hold on, some delicious milk here to start my day. Milking the data brought to you by BC Dairy. Local agriculture feeds BC. Let's keep it that way. Okay, this week we have a double exclusive for polling. Now I don't even think Global does a double exclusive. This is a Hotel Pacifico thing. Polaris Strategic Insights have been providing daily national numbers to our sister show, Cursive Politics. And today we're going to provide you with Polaris breakdown for British Columbia. Now it's drawn from a large national sample. The BC sample is about 243 respondents. So we're talking margin of error around 6% for those of you who keep track of that stuff. And what the results show from March 31st to April 3rd, so the previous week where they're doing daily tracking each night, and they've rolled it up into a weekly result here, is in British Columbia, Liberal 38, Conservative 38, NDP 20, Green 4, and People's Party are, below 1%. And comparing that to 2021, obviously that's Liberals have had a big uptick compared to the last election. They're up 11, mainly at the expense of the NDP, who are down 9. The Conservatives are up 5, mainly at the expense of the People's Party. Yeah, it's not as simple as that. It's not as neat as that, where all the NDPers are gone Liberals and all the People's
Yeah,
Party. But that's the way it looks, right?
yeah,
So, but Richard, you've got some numbers.
I do. So Ipsos has provided some polling for Global BC, Global News, the company I work for. So national survey again, 1,000 people surveyed. The provincial sample is 136. So again, it's small, but
Yeah,
it gives us a sense. What's going to be interesting to you is the NDP numbers are a bit different. And obviously, with these
yeah.
sample sizes, it's hard to fully gauge. But Ipsos has the Liberals at 42%, Conservatives at 37%, the NDP at 7%, the Greens at 6% here in British Columbia, and the People's Party down at 1%. Again, small sample size for British Columbia, but it gives us a sense there. And when we walk through the ridings today, obviously where that NDP vote
Yeah.
is going to tell a lot of the story. And I think when we delve into south of the Fraser, this is where the Conservatives have to emerge in British Columbia. If they don't get close to sweeping all of these seats, it's going to be a rough night in this province for the Conservatives. They aren't going to make the gains they need to. The only way the Liberals benefit in that region is if they are taking, like you described,
Yeah.
almost one for one those new Democratic votes. So,
Well,
that hemorrhaging of the NDP vote is obviously one of the stories of this entire campaign.
I think the poll results, and if you look at the aggregators as well, it does show a two-way race in BC. However, while Ipsos did not detect it, Polera and some of the others, including Abacus, I think, are showing the NDP creeping up back to closer to their historic levels. Sidebar, yeah, yesterday there was a city by-election in Vancouver, which showed surprising strength for the left
Yeah,
winning those two by-elections. So
yeah.
a low
But there's
turnout, but
sure.
it's not like they've gone away for good. Like there are left-wing voters out there that just depends what home they find here in the federal election.
Yeah, and that's the complicated piece, right? These are progressive voters that helped give David Eby an extremely slim majority government in October, these voters are not gone. There are new
Yeah.
Democratic voters all across British
Yeah.
Columbia. What I am hearing almost universally in some of these places like Vancouver, like Victoria, is voter replacement. That these
Yeah.
are centrist progressives, some with kids, some without, younger, often sort of family, 20s, 30s, 40s, who are saying, I really do not want the conservatives. And I am going to, in essence, lend my vote to the Liberals this time around. So I'm not sure we can read a lot into the Vancouver results, considering
Mm.
it largely was a referendum on Ken Sims' leadership, which has not been great.
Mm.
And his party really got slapped down last night in those numbers. But yes, New Democrats exist, but I just think they are putting on a Liberal t-shirt for this campaign, and then we'll quickly remove it when it's all over. I just want to make the point, you got to this about the aggregators. So if you look at the aggregators, Liberals at
Mm.
43, Conservatives at 38, NDP at 13 province-wide. You go back to 2021, the Conservatives were at 33.1%. The Liberals were 27%. And the reason I bring it up is about the issue of voter efficiency, right? So the Liberals are way up, like you described, but they won 15 seats with
Yeah.
27% of the vote.
Yeah.
So can they keep anywhere close to that efficiency? Because if they can, this is going to be their best result in the province's history. And the NDP were almost at 30% last time around. And with that, we're able to get 13 seats. So when you see that vote, disappear, it's hard to believe that they're going to get anywhere close to any efficiency with their vote share.
Yeah, when you get down to the low 20s, you really it's hard to win seats province-wide
Yeah.
unless you're super concentrated in one region. So yeah, more to come. We'll see what the numbers look like next week. I think the NDP are going to be more in the conversation. Maybe not. It might still be a two-way race, but I certainly see them getting off the deathbed to some extent. So let's drill down on the south of Fraser. Um, this week we're going to focus on riding south of the Fraser between south of the north arm of the Fraser, between Richmond and the Langleys, and we'll also hop across the Fraser east of the Pitt River and take a look at Pitt Meadows Maple Ridge as well. So we're looking at that belt of ridings. We're going to stop at Langley Township and deal with the Fraser Valley with the interior next week, the rest of the Fraser Valley and the interior next week. So the ones we're going to focus on today are 10 ridings. There's a lot of boundary changes, and I'm going to give a shout out to Professor Ken Carty, emeritus from UBC, who's the guru of electoral redistribution processes. And he would want me to mention that all but two ridings in BC had some level of boundary change in this compared to the last federal election. So there's been a lot of moving around. There's always a lot of moving around in Surrey because there's so much growth. So it's not apples to apples compared to last election. But that's you know it's our job to figure out how that's how that's going to
Yeah.
play out
Yeah.
this time. So let's start with Richmond. This was we talked a bit about it on the regular pod last week because these ridings have been ensnared in Chinese voter interference allegations since the last election. They both elected Liberals last time. Somewhat surprisingly, I think people thought they were going to stay conservative. They had been conservative seats for a couple of elections. This time in Richmond Center Marpole, which is a new configuration because it's reaching over to Vancouver to take a little slice of Marpole to add to the Richmond Center part. Richmond City Councilor Chakao is running against the incumbent Liberal MP Wilson Miao, and the NDP is Martin Lee. But this is a two-way race, and we're going to sound repetitive because most of these ridings in the south of Fraser area here are going to be two-way races between the Liberals and the Conservatives. But he's bounced around a bit. He's a former NDP provincial candidate, had expressed interest in BC Liberal candidacies in the past, and here he is running as a Conservative. He's been on City Council for quite some time. He's certainly proven himself to be electable at a municipal level.
Yeah. And you look at those, you talk about the results from 2021 and the 2025 maps. We have a pretty good sense of that. So if you look at this riding, the Liberals would have won by 3 points. These Richmond ridings are extremely interesting to me because of the issues in those communities. And if you look at provincial polls, you would think the Liberals are going to, in essence, hold on to everything. These are ridings that flipped in the last provincial election, except for Richmond-Steveston, which is in the other federal riding.
Yeah.
The Conservatives are making gains there. You did a good job with Kate and Jeff at walking through some of the diaspora issues, but issues like drug decriminalization, consumption sites, and expect Pierre Poilievre to spend time on this issue, drug diversion. These issues matter in Richmond. A more socially conservative base, again, not all voters of a certain diaspora are the same, but we do see some of those trends that emerge. The Conservatives need this one. Like, this is a must-have for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. Local candidate, as you describe, well-known in community. Wilson Miao, an incumbent, again, not as high profile as maybe some of his other colleagues in British Columbia, but that doesn't always seem to matter in the Chinese community in terms of a provincial profile. Local profile is what matters here. So this is going to be a really interesting one that, you know, there's a scenario here that bucks the polling trends. You know, you just look at it, the Liberals shouldn't be losing any ridings based on the fact that they are seeing this massive surge in the polls.
Shouldn't have won them last time, though.
No, and exactly. This is a traditional conservative riding.
Both Richmond seats were conservative, and they both switched Liberal last time, I think to the surprise of Liberals. You know, it's interesting. I mean, there's a Chinese media reality, because the majority of the population is Chinese in Richmond, especially this Richmond Center Marpole riding. You've got Fairchild and you've got AM 1320, and they have different outlooks too. Like, one is more pro-mainland than China than the other. And there's a Cantonese Mandarin difference. There's a lot to unpack. And a lot of this campaign is taking place on WeChat. And that is not transparent to people who don't speak English.
No.
Or sorry, don't speak Chinese or understand Chinese. We just don't know what's going on WeChat. It's going to be an interesting one to watch. Over in now called Richmond East Steveston, there's a bit of musical chairs. As we talked about on the pod last week, two former MPs wanted the Conservative nomination. Kenny Chiu, who had represented the riding, who was very outspoken on the Chinese voter interference issue, and Wei Young, who represented Vancouver South, also ran for mayor of Vancouver at one point. She was critical of Kenny Chiu for being so outspoken on voter interference. And the Conservatives just said, you know what, we're not going to go with either of these two candidates. We're going to move Zach Siegel, who was running for the nomination of Richmond Center, over to Steveston, and Bob's your uncle. Right. So Zach Siegel had run for the federal Conservatives in my riding, Vancouver Granville, 2019, I think. So there you go. Zach's on the ballot.
Yeah. And so is Parham Bains, the incumbent for the Liberals. This one is a little bit safer for the Liberals. Again, you take the 2021 results, put it on these maps. Liberals win it by 8 points. We saw some consistency here in the provincial with Kelly Green holding on to that Richmond-Steveston riding. So there has been some progressive consistency here. The demographics start changing a little bit when you move into Steveston. So it's less of these progressive or social conservative issues that you may see creep into the ballot in the other Richmond riding. You know, Parham Bains is a guy you know very well, obviously, and has served well. He worked for the provincial government, for those who are unfamiliar, for Krista Clark, you know, strong in the community. You know, we were chit-chatting recently, and, you know, big base in the Richmond soccer community. So, you know, this is one of those ones where you look at the Justin Trudeau numbers applied, there's no way they hold on to this seat. This is gone for sure. But now with the switch that we've seen with Mark Carney as leader, this is a riding that, again, I believe the Conservatives have to have. Like, this is a must-have for the Conservatives to show that they are making inroads. If they're not winning this riding and ridings like it, the Conservatives are not winning the election. The Liberals can't afford to lose these ridings. There'll be a few others that we'll talk about that are must-have for the Liberals that we'll talk about in a minute. but this one is starting to trend towards the Liberals again. If these numbers stay
They hold.
consistent, yeah,
So the NDP have just put
yeah,
in Kiefer Pellick, who is a political aide to the finance minister, Brenda Bailey.
yeah.
Um, I think he's, hate to say this, Kiefer, cannon fodder. But they got to show up on the ballot.
They do.
So they are in this region writ large that we're talking about today. There's still some holes for the NDP. They're probably madly trying to get candidates on the ballot as the deadline is Monday to
And
be, or else that's it.
and where do their 20 points go? And that is the big question,
Yeah.
right? Because, unless things turn around dramatically, the NDP is not getting 20% in this riding. So where do those numbers go? And I think the best sense is that they go Liberal, which makes things a little bit easier for Parm Baines in his reelection.
Yeah, we'll see.
Imagine reporting your car's been stolen in the Lower Mainland, only to discover it's connected to organized crime rings across 3 provinces, or even trafficking networks across the border. This is the reality of today's fast-evolving criminal landscape, and this is where RCMP members come in. They're not just your local police officers. They're highly trained professionals working seamlessly across and beyond BC, protecting your family, your business, and your community. With world-class training and cross-Canada coordination, the RCMP uniquely connect the dots between local, provincial, and federal crimes, keeping Canadian communities safe. Canadians need a commitment to stable, sufficient funding for the RCMP. Will our federal election candidates commit to investing in the people who protect us? Send a letter to party leaders and learn more by visiting whyweserve.ca/election2025. Authorized by the National Police Federation, whyweserve.ca/election2025, 587-600-0630.
Well, let's cross the south arm of the Fraser and go over to Delta, where 3-time Liberal MP and cabinet minister, senior cabinet minister Carla Qualtrough has retired, and she has passed the mantle over to Jill McKnight, who was executive director of the Delta Chamber of Commerce, and she's being challenged by Conservative Jesse Sahota, a police officer. The NDP are running Jason McCormick. So, I think going back in the time machine 3 or 4 months, that this one is definitely circled by the Conservatives as a win.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Big time. Pierre Poilievre went there. He stood behind Jesse Sahota. He did an event just before the writ drop with Jesse Sahota. They saw this is a really good candidate for them as they go across the country with their tough on crime agenda. But with the ballot question changing, even in British Columbia, this becomes harder. And this is one of the few ridings where the Liberals were actually able to find a female candidate in Jill McKnight. They've had some problems finding women to go on the ballot for them in this province. This was one that, based on the last election results and the current maps, the Liberals would have won by 9 points. But you're exactly right. Similar but different than Richmond. Demographics are shifting. We're seeing more of the South Asian community come into this riding in North Delta.
Yeah.
We're seeing the farming community come into this in South Delta. Jason McCormick ran for the NDP in South Delta against Ian Payton. Obviously, didn't do particularly well there. Again, the new Democratic vote is the one to watch here. 18.5% last time around. We expect that to go down. Where does that vote go? Jill McKnight is, in essence, as good a candidate, I think, as the Liberals could have got in there as we focus in on economic issues in the face of Trump. And so that will be the counter to the police officer is this, pro-business. But, I think we're starting to see trend lines that dictate back to 2015 when we saw that Liberal surge. And you go back to this riding in 2015, Mike, the Liberals won this by nearly 17 points. And I know the maps are a bit different and the world is a lot different than it was in 2015. And Trudeau mania was very different than what we're seeing with Mark Carney. But Carla Qualtrough came and beat a minister, Carrie Lynn Finlay, who then moved over, and we'll talk about her in a few minutes. But I think look at those results, 17-point win by the Liberals, and it makes me start believing that this riding is looking safer and safer for the Liberals and is no longer the potential swing that the Conservatives, thought it was in a Trudeau election.
Well, it is a tale of 2 cities here, or two half of one
well,
city.
There's another city. There is a city.
Well,
you can call Tawasin a city if you want.
Well, you've got Ladner and Tawasin on one side, which is the Delta South Provincial riding, and you've got North Delta on the other side, and they're both 50-50 between North Delta and South Delta. And the Conservatives may with the candidate they have, they may be thinking they can get a slice of Ravi Kalen's vote in North Delta if through the South Asian community, which is quite strongly represented in North Delta. So we might see some interesting, crossover voting. If that NDP vote federally does slide, it doesn't necessarily all go Liberal. It depends on the dynamics of that community and whether they stick to an ideological frame or whether it's more like I have connections in the community through family and other things, and may vote for Jesse Sahota. So we'll see. It's become an uphill slog for the Conservatives though in the last couple months for sure.
It
Now
has.
we get to yep.
Yeah, you mentioned Ravi Kahlon. His vote
Yeah.
only went down 4% in the provincial, which based on
Oh,
what we saw with the NDP, that's not a whole lot. So I'm not sure how many votes are there, but clearly tapping into the South Asian community will be important for all parties here.
right. Well, now we get to the great city of Surrey, which has 5 ridings. Um, a lot of South Asian candidates are running for both the Liberals and Conservatives. In fact, we have a lot of men running as well. For the Liberals, 5 for 5 on the male front, and the Conservatives are running four men out of 5 there. Now we've got 2 Liberal incumbents who I think they're both fairly comfortable and fairly safe. We've got Randeep Sarai in Surrey Centre. He's being challenged by Rajveer Dhillon from the Conservatives. And Surrey Newton, Sukh Dhaliwal, being challenged by Sherry Punjab radio host Harjit Singh Gill. And then the NDP are running Raj Singh Toor, who's quite active in commemorating the Kamagata Maru. Hard to see in this election, Sukh or Randeep losing their grip on their ridings.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's hard, it's not coming to top of mind, Mike, but I can't imagine a woman that may have been able to run for the Liberals somewhere in Surrey, eh?
Yeah.
Maybe
No.
it's hard to tap into sort of the former premier demographic of things.
Yeah.
So let's look at these Surrey ridings. I digress. It's interesting because the NDP used to be at play here federally, and we've seen a lot of that vote bleed. And again, the map has changed so much in the last 6 months. I know there was a lot of nervousness from both Randeep Sarai and Sukh Dhaliwal about holding on to these ridings. There was even in consideration, I think, at a time to say, well, maybe we don't run again. And the map has changed a lot. The story of the provincial election was Conservative gains in Surrey. They did much better than expected. There is a movement in the community, and Surrey is vast and diverse. It doesn't just play into certain parts of the South Asian community or even into South Surrey. It is a complicated place politically, but that Conservative movement was real. I'm just not sure that in Surrey Newton, Surrey Centre, federally, they're going to be able to tap into that again like we saw in October.
Yeah. Well, it depends what the ballot question is. In Surrey in October 2024, provincially, certainly Surrey's fair share, affordability,
Yeah.
healthcare, the situation on the streets. There's a lot driving voter anger.
Yes. Yeah.
If the ballot question is who best to deal with Donald Trump, that's good for the Liberals.
Yeah.
If the ballot question is we're pissed off and we want it fixed, then better for the Conservatives. And right now, the Conservatives seem to be losing the share of attention on the stuff they want the voters to talk about. But that, there's still lots of time left in this election. There's 3 weeks left. So we'll see how the pendulum shifts, if it does at all, in the next week here on the debate. The other ridings in Surrey are more competitive.
Sure.
Well, first of all, I'll start with Fleetwood Port Kells, which actually may not be that competitive. It's actually been a Liberal seat for 3 times, except the incumbent's not running again, Ken Hardy. And the Liberals have nominated Gurbuk Sinai, who's endorsed by Hardy, who actually had a very long political career in Williams Lake. And I believe he was on council like 7 times or something like that. And he was always seen as the big Liberal in Williams Lake. He was coming out of the forest industry there. He's still a small business person. Gerbucks is, well into his 70s, I believe. So he's a, distinguished gentleman. but not the youth movement, that's for sure. He is being challenged by Suk Pander from the Conservatives, who's a former professional kabaddi player, which is a big sport in the South Asian community, especially in Surrey. And the NDP are running Shannon Permel. Now, we Newton for sure is a strong South Asian population. That's where the major concentration is in Surrey. Fleetwood, not so much. Like Fleetwood, I think the South Asian population in Fleetwood is about 20%.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of Korean, a lot of Chinese, a lot of Filipino, obviously white voters as well. Very, very diverse. Yet the South Asian candidates, are there for both parties because they represent a very influential network, especially in Surrey. But if you take all that away and just look at party brands, that's a riding where you think, well, why would the Liberals lose it if they won it the last three times and they're ahead of where they were last election in the polls? So
I
probably
really want to
thinking
see.
Liberal here.
Yeah, I think so. I really want to see your kabaddi skills. That's what I'm most interested in at this point.
Yeah.
This is one of those ones with redistribution got slightly better for the Liberals. And the Liberals would have won this one by nearly 18 points based on these maps. So again, similar trend lines. If the Liberals are bleeding here, the Conservatives pick it up. With a Liberal surge, how possibly could they lose a seat that they won by 18 points last time around? It's just not mathematically possible. So this is less, there's less factors here about Surrey being left out. I think in some of the other ridings, you're seeing that infrastructure gap is a big thing, but it's still people who live in these communities, they have to go to a hospital where it's a 12-hour wait on some weekends. You have roads that are in essence in, standstill mode for most of the day. You have kids that instantly go to portables. But again, who's getting blamed here, right? And I think the voters put out their anger on the provincial government, and largely those are provincial responsibilities. So I'm not sure they tie the infrastructure crisis in Surrey to the federal government.
Right. So Cloverdale Langley City is an interesting one because
the
Liberals won it in 2015. They lost in 2019. John Aldaig was the MP. He lost to Tamara Jansen. And in 2021, Aldaig won it back. And then Aldaig decided to run for the BC NDP unsuccessfully. And it caused a federal by-election, which I think took place in early December.
It did, yeah.
And the Liberals got absolutely smoked by about 50 points. Dramatic loss. And the dying days, we didn't know it at the time, the dying days of the Trudeau administration. And now Jansen's seeking re-election against a new Liberal candidate, Kyle Latchford, and the NDP are running Vanessa Sharma. But this is because of those poll results, the way they are, if they hold, this might be coming back to the Liberals again. The game of ping pong continues.
Yeah, so, you and I went through this during the provincial. I ranked all of the provincial ridings based on interest. I'm not going to do the same here, but I have to say that this is probably one of the most three interesting ridings in the province.
Is this the most interesting in south of Fraser for you?
I think the next one we talk about maybe, but no, I think this has to be it. Mike, have you ever seen a situation like this?
I'm lumping that with Nanaimo from last week now. I'm building a list for you.
4 months ago, you have a by-election where a party loses by 50%, gets eviscerated.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden a leader leaves and you have a riding that the Liberals could win. It is wild to me to contemplate what that looks like. I know this has happened before in Canadian history, but Tamara Jansen may be in the situation. I know she's won before, but she may be in a situation where she wins a seat and never actually sits in the House of Commons winning that seat. Because
interesting.
She won, she was sworn in, but she hasn't yet sat in the House of Commons, and she may never sit. Yes, she was an MP before, so it's not a total
been MP for almost 6 months and never sat in the House of Commons. That's an interesting angle.
That would be a little bit of a conversation piece. Like you mentioned, new candidate Madison Fleischer did not prove to be a great candidate for the Liberals. By-elections, though, are challenging and unique. Kyle Latchford worked for Aldaig. What I have seen about him is he is extremely well liked, in the community. He did good work when he worked for LDAG as a constituency representative. Works for TransLink now. So it will be wildly interesting. And then not just the dynamics of that, but what this riding is, right? Mm-hmm. So this was one of the ones where the NDP saw their fortune switch provincially in 2020, and it all went away last election. Like they lost Cloverdale, they lost the Langleys. This is where David Eby suffered. And these are voters here, families, a lot of them moved out of Vancouver. Lots of people, you know, you hear the stories about these are Vancouver police officers and firefighters who live in this community and commute into Vancouver because of the cost of living crisis. This is a place, and I have friends who live in this riding, and I've gone to soccer with them on the weekend with their kids, and like soccer fields are packed, playgrounds are packed, young families here. These are the voters who we typically describe as swing voters that are willing, not ones who have decided I'm always going to vote the same way. And they go between liberal and conservative. And this is going to be a crew. We'll see both the leaders here for sure. Like this is a place where they want to see the leader show up. And it matters the conversations that are happening at the soccer field on the weekend.
Yep, absolutely. Well, the next riding you're salivating over is South Surrey, White Rock. Carrie Lynn Finlay probably has been the preeminent federal conservative MP in British Columbia, and has a controversial husband, Brent Chapman, who was elected to the provincial legislature in October in a sea of controversy over comments he'd made previously on social media. Definitely seen as a maverick, to be sure, in John Rusted's caucus. She is being challenged by I think he's former White Rock City Councilor.
Current.
Oh, he's current, I'm sorry. Ernie Klassen. The NDP have not announced a candidate. So how much does the Brent Chapman controversy dog Carrie Lynn Finlay? Does it?
I'm not sure it does. I think there was a scenario where if Brent Chapman had decided to quit the Conservative caucus and go with the three that have left, that it became an issue. But, you know, I see Brent Chapman every day, always the legislature. Yes, he's controversial. Yes, he's made some really abhorrent comments on social media in the past. But you actually see a guy in the hallways now who is trying to redeem himself. You know, he is spending more time engaging with media and his colleagues. Does that, and you know, I have a recent anecdotal story of him at a white spot, South Surrey, and he went to every single table, shook every single hand in the restaurant. He is trying to get into that role of MLA. But, you know, there may be voters there that, you know, in essence, tie them together as more socially conservative, more controversial in some ways. It's also a close race. Like the Conservatives would have won this by 5.5 points on the current maps. That is close. And that is with a Liberal Party that has now gone up quite a bit. So this makes it for sure a flippable seat. And there aren't a ton in Metro Vancouver where it's a conservative liberal flip. The Liberals are looking to flip a ton of new Democratic seats. The Conservatives are looking to flip a bunch of new Democratic seats. But this is one where the Liberals could take from the Conservatives. And again, if the Liberals are taking from Conservatives, that wins you an election.
Oh, yeah.
Same as the Conservatives taking from Liberals. So that's why this one's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
There was a lot of talk about Christy Clark running in this riding. She would have served it well. Ernie Klassen is extremely popular in White Rock. And that's a demo that
White Rock's only 1/5 of the riding. Remember that, though.
Sure,
I mean, it's
but
South Surrey
it's
is
more
80% of it.
And you know, Mike, you know, you can call it Surrey, you can call it White Rock, but you know, people that live in White Rock can grocery shop in Surrey if they're not grocery shopping in Blaine, and vice versa. There's a popularity there. My understanding is for Ernie Klassen. People like him. And then there's the 15 points the New Democrats got last time. At least some of those are going to be up for grabs. And my sense is those go Liberal too. So this is one of the rare ones in Metro Vancouver where the Liberals could flip. At the same time, you have a high profile Conservative. But I just don't think she speaks to the
Well,
new demo of the Conservatives.
so
Like
the riding went conservative in 2015, probably
yes,
because of Diane Watts.
and it went yeah,
She bucked the Liberal tide in 2015. Then it went Liberal in a by-election when Diane left to run for the leadership of the BC Liberals. And Gordie Hogue won the by-election. Then he lost the seat to Carrie Lynn Finley in 2019, and then Carrie Lynn Finley held it in 2021.
yeah.
So again, it's been a big game of ping pong out there, and lump those two seats together in South Surrey between Cloverdale and South Surrey, and then you've got a battleground there. Whereas the three other seats in Surrey, probably more of a fait accompli the way things
Yeah.
are going. So let's go next door to Langley Township, Fraser Heights. This is a new configuration. They've shed some of the Langley over to next door to the Abbotsford riding. Taco Van Popta is seeking re-election. He was elected, I think, in 2019. Out there,
Yeah.
he's being challenged by Nassima Nasto for the Liberals, and the NDP are
Not
running Holly Isaac.
not anymore. So Liberals just made a change. So
Oh,
John
wow.
Aldag is now the Liberal candidate.
Are you
there.
serious?
I sure am. So they made a switch 2 days ago. The nomination paperwork
Wow.
got updated on the Liberal website. Yeah. So former MP John Aldag is now running in this riding for the Liberals. So there was a nominated
They'd announced a different candidate.
announced and nominated. And I was on the website on Friday,
Wow.
and the Liberals made an update to the nomination. So John Aldag,
Wow.
the former MP,
Breaking news for me.
next door, is now the candidate in this riding, and it
Wow.
obviously changes the dynamic. I can get your instant reaction to this now
Yeah.
that it's new news. Like, what do you think? What difference does it make here now that
You
John
know what?
Aldag, the former MP, is the candidate?
I don't know John Aldag. Nothing bad to say about him, but I do think it's kind of bullshit, actually, because he quit his federal seat, caused a federal by-election. How much did that cost?
Yeah,
$500,000 to run provincially, and now he
lost.
wants his seat back. He wants his seat back, and there should be some accountability for that. I don't mind it when people switch from federal to provincial, provincial to federal. That's a natural part of the process. But when it doesn't work out and you want it back right away, it's like, you know what? There should be some accountability for that, and there probably won't be. But I'm giving you my gut reaction on it. And what
Yeah.
happened to this other candidate? And we've been talking about it, like the lack of female candidates for the Liberals is surprising to me, given how they have championed that over the years. And now we're replacing a diverse female candidate with another white guy. And Liberals don't care about it this cycle. They've moved away from that as a priority, and I find that a bit surprising, actually.
Yeah. To give the benefit of the doubt, Nassima Nasto posted on her social media, not an easy decision, but one necessary for my own health. So, there could be health concerns there, and they had an
Yeah, I'm
easy
just looking at the
candidate.
big picture, though. I mean,
No, I agree totally. And the thing is, when you follow the trend lines as politicians, bad things sometimes happen. John Aldag was looking at the new Democratic surge,
Yeah,
saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be nice to
yeah,
go over to Victoria and be part of government because my boss Justin Trudeau is going to get pummeled in an election."
yeah,
And then he loses provincially, and then all of a sudden this opportunity comes up, and I know John Aldag. He is a
yeah,
very nice man, and
yeah.
I don't think this is pure opportunism, but clearly decisions were made saying, I don't want to lose my seat federally. Oh, do you know what? Now it's looking like I could win this one.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned Taco Von Popta in 2019. I do want to go back to 15 here quickly. Mark Wawara was the Conservative here, and he won it by 9 points. So that was the high watermark for the Liberals in BC, was 2015 election in terms of percentage. And they still lost this by 9 points. This is less Liberal friendly than Cloverdale, Langley City. This Langley Township, Fraser Heights, that used to be known as Langley Aldergrove, does cover off what we would describe as a more conservative part of Langley. You take the maps from 21, put them on 25. Conservatives win this by 14 points. So, like, if this is a real Liberal wave, Pierre Poilievre gets crushed in the election. The Liberals win this one. But I'm not sure that's what we're seeing here. And so that makes it an easier seat for Taco Van Pop than the Conservatives. Like, if the Liberals win this one, Mark Carney's winning 200 plus seats, massive majority government. If the Conservatives win it, that's what they should be doing.
Okay. Well, breaking news right here for me anyways. Okay, the last one we're going to look at here is we're going to hop across the Fraser, back across the Fraser to Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, where Conservative MP Mark Dalton is being challenged by Liberal Angeline Rowell and NDPer Daniel Haydenrich. Now, this has been an interesting three-way fight in the last couple elections. The Liberals won it in 2015 with Dan Rumi, who's now the mayor of Maple Ridge. The Conservatives and Dalton won it in 2019 and 2021, but it was close. And the NDP were actually second last time. The Liberals were third. So the NDP are probably fading to third in this configuration right now, and it's probably a Liberal-Conservative race. Angeline Rowell, I understand, is a lifelong East Maple Ridge person. I make that distinction because I was from West Maple Ridge. But Webster's Corners or Wannock are those areas. Has worked in Maple Ridge all her life, and presents well on social media. So the Liberals have a heartbeat out there. This isn't a riding they typically consider as one of their core ridings, but they did win it in 2015, and so I've got to think that Dalton's in for a bit of a race here.
Yeah, I think so. Again, I like looking at those results from last time on to the new ones, and the Conservatives would have beat the New Democrats by a little bit more than 6 points. But with 31% or so of the vote, where does that go? And if 10% of that, 15% of that goes Liberal, the Liberals win. And that is a reasonable scenario here. Again, this is a situation where Mark Carney, 200 plus seats in Canada, he wins this one. Mark Carney below 200, the Conservatives probably win this one. Pierre Poilievre has to win it. You're losing seats like this, you're done. And this is the one where, two new Democrats were incumbents, ran in the provincial election. One of them lost. Lawrence Mock beat Bob Deeth. This is a merging of, in essence, two provincial ridings here in Maple Ridge and into Pitt Meadows. And I think that this is a seat where it's similar to some of the others we've talked about, just like the last one. But I would expect, you're right. Like, if everything adds up for Carney and the Liberals, they're at play here. Like, they are at play here with this demo. Yes, there's lifelong residents of Maple Ridge, lots of them. But I have lots of colleagues in the Global BC newsroom who live in Maple Ridge, who are families they are costed out of other places in Metro Vancouver and have moved into Maple Ridge and have found it a very comfortable and great home. So I'm curious about a place like this, but I do think it sort of falls into a category of ridings where it really requires a big upwards trend from central campaign.
Well, my first campaign was in this riding in 1984, and we got, as a Liberal, and we got spanked very hard by Jerry St. Germain, Progressive Conservative. So hats off to Jerry for absolutely educating me about politics in the first election.
And that's a big hat. Jerry's got a big cowboy hat on, so that's a big hat.
He's still going strong. So writ large in this region, the starting gun was 7 Liberal, 3 Conservative based on the results of last election. It could go 9-1 Liberal, or it could go 7-3 Conservative. So it is going to be interesting. I think this is probably, well, the island has a lot of potential fluidity as well. We talked about last week, but this region also has a lot of potential fluidity between the parties.
Yeah, and a seat's a seat, right? Like, they all count the same when you add up the totals. But like you talk about in sports standings, when you take from your chief opponent, it's basically a 2-point game, right? Liberal takes from a Conservative, 1 up for me, 1 down for them, other way around. So that's why these ones, to me, are almost more important. If you're taking from the New Democrats, both parties are going to take from the New Democrats this election, maybe in an equal manner. So ridings like this are the ones I believe are the most reflective of how this province goes and maybe how the country goes. If Pierre Poilievre is picking up from Mark Carney in this region, 3-4 seats, Pierre Poilievre could be the prime minister. Mark Carney is holding or picking up here, Mark Carney's the prime minister.
Okay, well, next week we'll finish off the Fraser Valley seats, including the Mike DeYoung brawl for it all, and we'll hoover up the interior next week. So I look forward to that. But Richard, let's head off to the Mimosa bar. Are you going to have your mimosa with grapefruit juice or orange juice this week?
So I was going to go grapefruit juice, and it was going to go to Mark Harney. I am sour because he hasn't come to British Columbia yet, but he'll be in Victoria tonight. He'll be through BC the next few days. So we'll put that one to the side. Mark Harney, you're off the hook this week. So my orange mimosa sweetness goes to Dan Albus. I was at a rally in Penticton yesterday. He is the candidate that represents Penticton and many other beautiful areas of the Okanagan. I watched him for an hour and a half following the rally, put away signs, put away chairs, clean up water bottles. Politics is hard, Mike. When you have a candidate who's willing to stick around at a venue with lots of volunteers and do the hard work, carry chairs, fold them up, stack them up, that's impressive to me. So my mimosa goes to Dan Albus for his hard work following the rally in Penticton.
Okay. I think I just had my mimosa about 5 minutes ago. You
surprised
me on the John Eldaeg's thing, and yeah, that left a sour taste in my mouth. With no disrespect to John Eldaeg, I definitely I found that a little tart. Okay, Richard, thanks for joining us today for episode 2 of Hotel Pacifico's Battle for BC, and to our sponsors, the National Police Federation and BC Dairy. See you next time. BC, you can never leave.